right, we're back here on the Chase Thomas podcast. I think Matt saying he needed a swig made the beginning of this podcast because I didn't know that that's what he was doing. I didn't know that's how we were doing things. But the full ride with Matt Green, fellow University of North Georgia alumni, is here. Matt, good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening, sir. I am back, and I'm now refreshed.
You're refreshed. Are you a ice water person?
Quenched. Big ice water guy. Don't drink coffee. Not a coffee guy. I just drink ice water like throughout the day.
Is that it? Like, so you have no other, like, you're just drinking water throughout the entire...
No, and then with like every meal, or like with most meals, like lunch and dinner, I'm probably drinking a Coke. Which Coke,
like regular Coke or Diet Coke?
Just regular Coke.
Are you serious?
The pure stuff. None of that diet garbage. Coke, there's just nothing better like with a meal, like pizza with like a steak or just anything, honestly. A Coke is it's the perfect beverage to go. But I only drink it like with food. I will never like just be hanging out and rarely just be hanging out and like want a Coke. Like if I'm at like a Braves game or something, I'm not just gonna get a Coke to drink and nothing else. You know what I mean? If I'm eating a burger or something, I'm gonna get a Coke with it. But I don't just drink. I usually don't just drink Coke.
That's interesting because like that's when I get a soda if I get one. It's like at the movie theater or a sporting event, like when I'm never ever gonna have one outside of that. That's like my only time it's
movie
ever
theater
happen.
I feel like applies because you're getting like popcorn or something. So that would also be that would fit in there.
Speaking of movie theaters, I went to see Black Phone over the weekend with the fiance.
I've never even heard of that.
It's the new one with Ethan Hawke, the scary movie.
Okay.
You've probably seen the advertising.
Scary movie guy? I've never seen Ethan Hawke in a commercial.
I mean, Ethan Hawke is an absolute delight, and he's in my top 3 all time. I mean, it's Jake Gyllenhaal 1, and then it's a distant 2, 3 after that. Like a big Jake G guy.
Is that right?
Yeah, I love Jake G. Prisoners, Nightcrawler, Nocturnal Animals. Jake Gyllenhaal is he's absolutely
big Brokeback Mountain guy.
It's a good movie. It's a good film.
I've never seen it, but Jake, I can't even feel like I don't feel like I've seen that many movies with Jake Gyllenhaal in it, to be honest.
Hey,
Ethan Hawke is like one of those like Hansel's line about Sting and Zoolander. It's like I don't really listen to his music, but the fact that he's making it, I respect that. Like I don't feel like I've seen that many Ethan Hawke movies, but I'm like that guy's a good actor. I've seen Training Day. I've seen what's the Gattaca? Is that the movie?
I'm not sure.
Ethan Hawke, right?
I'm not sure. I don't think I've seen that one.
Oh, good movie. Jude Law is an excellent movie. But so Ethan Hawke, I respect that. He's a quality actor.
Yeah, no, I'm a Ethan Hawke guy for sure. I mean, Before Sunrise, Sunset, and After Midnight is one of my favorite trilogies of all time. It's a big thing. It's the best rom-com trilogy that you'll ever find. The most realistic love story that you'll ever find. It's fantastic. You and Tori should binge it.
I'm like, I watch movies, I listen to music, but I'm not a movie or music person, right? Like I can be entertained by just about anything,
Okay.
And like I'm the kind of person who hears stuff on the radio. I'm like, oh yeah, that's a good song. But I feel like music people are like, it's mainstream garbage, Like real movie people are like, oh, there's no plot here, whatever, holes in the storyline. I'm not that person. When it comes to movies, I want to laugh and entertain me.
Well, I either want a really good one or a really bad one. I don't like the in between. The 6.5s are rough for me, where it's like, oh man, you were so close to turning the corner to making this thing brilliant, or you were so close to just being a hilariously bad movie. That's the worst spot to be in, is where you're right in that middle ground. If you have an IMDb score
of
like
that are played on TBS all the time,
yeah, that kind of thing, where it's just they're fine. And I don't want fine. I either want memorably bad, like the Wrong Turn franchise series, or memorably great, like the Shawshanks of the world. So I don't know, or any Jake Gyllenhaal movie. I don't know if you, I can recite it if you need me to recite the Jake Gyllenhaal experience.
The Day After Tomorrow, was that?
That's not Jake.
Who was it? That wasn't Jake Gyllenhaal in that movie?
No, I don't think so. Is that are you talking about the apocalypse with the snow and everything?
Yeah, the global warming movie.
Yeah, I remember seeing that. I don't think Jake Gyllenhaal was in that.
We'll have to look that one up.
Yeah, as the
Jake Gyllenhaal expert, I'll have to trust you.
I'm not seeing it.
No, he's in it. Dennis Quaid,
is he
Jake
really?
Gyllenhaal, and Emmy Rossum.
There you go, from Shameless.
I'll take you at your word, sir.
Velvet Buzzsaw, that's another great one. There's all kinds of great ones. But this is not a Jake Gyllenhaal appreciation podcast, although Jake Gyllenhaal, whenever you want to come to the pod, more than welcome on the Chase
Friend of the
podcast.
pod.
Friend of the pod, always. Well, we have some college football we should ostensibly be discussing on this Wednesday night edition here on the podcast. How many days are we away from the debut of, or return rather, of college football, Matt Green?
We are 65 days away from college football, sir. So that means this Saturday we will be 9 Saturdays from college football. So in honor of the 65th day, as you can imagine, 65 is a hard number to come up with. Linemen, with all due respect to the linemen out there, they're not they're not the most memorable players. So we went recent on this one. And which I just thinking about it, it's like he's got to be one of the best 65s of all time. Tyler Linderbaum from Iowa, 25th pick of the draft for the Ravens this year, Remington Award winner. I'm not gonna lie, I thought when I saw mock drafts and everything coming out and Tyler Linderbaum projected first round pick, I thought to myself, hasn't Tyler Linderbaum been drafted like 4 times already? Like, I swear every lineman from the Big Ten is some sort of who's Matt Lindstrom? Like, I know that name. There's all these Linderbaum, Lindstrom. Who the Falcons draft from Notre Dame a couple years ago? The guard.
Notre Dame.
Did the Falcons draft him, or the guard from Notre Dame a couple years ago? I feel like I had a similar
you had
name.
Michigan from last year, Jalen Mayfield.
I'm thinking of maybe a guy from Minnesota a few years ago. These, I feel like Tyler Linderbaum. It's such a common offensive lineman name. It felt like I don't even. I based that on very little, but yeah, 6-5, 65. Tyler Linderbaum. So we'll give him some love, and also 6-5. I don't know if I've ever seen a team go 6-5 in the modern era of college football because we just don't play that many games anymore. So shout out to the 2020 Auburn Tigers who also went 6-5 and in honor of 65 days to college football.
It's interesting too. I remember going through Auburn's record history over decades, and 5-5 back-to-back years is just never happened. They went 6-5, but I think the 6 is the bowl win, right? Didn't they get a bowl game for that? Am I misremembering that?
No, they lost to Northwestern in the bowl game that year.
Okay, so they went 6-4 in the regular season.
Yeah, and it's like that's the all SEC schedule too. Yeah. So it's like it's 6-5. It's like this is probably one of their typical years where they go 8-5, 9-4, or something like that, with a couple easier wins at a conference.
Well, they never do it. Like, that's the whole thing, is if you go through their history, they never do 500 back to back. And if they do it, there's a coaching change. So if Brian Harston is somewhere within 6-6 this year, he's out. If you look through their history, like, you just don't go 3 straight years of 500 football at Auburn. Like, that's just not something that continues. And we're just like, well, here we are. This is where we're at.
It's that's because you know what it's time for, though, right?
What?
It's time for a win over Alabama. It's like that. That's what happens for Auburn. It's like once all hope is lost, then they have this breakthrough season, and then they beat Alabama, and then it's like everything's good again, and that'll ride us out for the next 4 or 5 years before we get negative again, and then we beat Alabama again, and everything's fine again.
I mean, it's not a bad thing to be Auburn, where when you do have this special season, you know that you're going pretty far. It's not one of those special seasons that's going to be wasted, but then you're going to have to go through the 7-5, 6-6, 8-4 kind of stuff.
Like, Auburn never fakes their way to an SEC championship appearance. Like there's 6 ranked games on their schedule on the way to that.
Yeah,
it's like even a couple years ago in 2017, it's like they opened with Clemson. It's like on top of that ridiculous schedule, they played another college football playoff team. Like just absurd. They played 3 college football playoff teams in 2017, and we're an SEC championship game away from being a college football playoff team.
I mean, they had to go. So you have Clemson on the schedule, and then you have to go Georgia, Bama, Georgia again, and it's like it just. That's a big what if year if you're an Auburn fan, where you're like, Carrion's not healthy, bruised up, like
Yeah.
you did what you're supposed to do, and then you have to do it again, and that's something that's waiting for those ACC, and just that's something that's going to be part of. I mean, divisions are gone and they're going away, and this is something that year is going to be the norm. Like where a team has a great year, like A&M, you finally break through, you're 11-1, and then you beat Alabama, you beat whoever, and then it's like, okay, who are we facing the SEC title game? Alabama again, and you're like, oh my god, and
Yeah.
it's going to be significantly
Some
more difficult.
a two-loss SEC team is going to just have so many good wins on their belt, but
Yeah,
it's just going to be a brutal conference. But yeah, that 2017, like, and thinking about that Auburn team too, like I don't know if you remember the start of that SEC championship game. Davin Bellamy and like the second quarter, Davin Bellamy gets that strip sack, and like Auburn's like inside the 20, inside the 25, up 7-0, like
mm,
about to go up 14-0. Like that game, like after that play, it was like Georgia just dominated the entire rest of the game. Like 28-7, I think was the final score. But it can just come down to like just plays that just swing the momentum of a game. I mean, that's
uh,
kind of what happened the first time they played in Jordan Hare when they just waxed Georgia. And that's another thing. Like coming off a game where you got blasted by this team, fall down 14-0, that could kind of change the mindset of the entire team and just the whole game.
yeah, and I mean they have not sniffed that level of elite play since then. So maybe things change this year. I have my doubts, but we shall see. We shall see. Bill Clark retiring at UAB due to health related issue, back stuff. Like he cannot just get right. Unfortunately, with what he's dealing with health wise, he's had multiple surgeries. He's tried to get through it, and I mean, Bill Clark is like one of the all-time big what if coaches. I was thinking about the coaches who never made the jump and tried. Like, look at the Brian Kellys of the world. Like, if they don't leave Cincinnati, if let's see, like Urban Meyer, because he goes from Bowling Green to Utah to Florida and then to Ohio State. Like those coaches who make that jump from like the group of five and at least try. We at least know what Butch Jones did at the Power Five
That's a
level. We
big what if I never thought about too. Like Utah jumped to the Power Five
mm-hmm.
a couple years after Urban Meyer. Like who knows? Urban could have just built a Pac-12 dynasty
That's
out
true.
there.
I hadn't even like that's another one. Like, yeah, he could have just stayed if they were already in the Power Five, and
Yeah.
that was a thing. Like, he could have just been like, "All right, I'm good here, and I'm just going to dominate the Pac-12 for the next decade." And then Oregon doesn't happen. Oregon is not Oregon if Urban Meyer stays at Utah for years.
Yeah, very possible.
That's wild.
Then
But Bill Clark,
Who does Florida go out and get into that? Does Florida get Nick Saban? Is that something that happens?
I mean, the all time is just if Drew Brees is a Dolphin, Saban never leaves, and then Alabama. Who knows who Alabama hires at that point? Like, who do they get if Drew Brees is a Dolphin and Saban never comes? Like, that's the all time college football what if.
Yeah,
I
I
don't know.
wonder who are the coaches getting new jobs around that time. I don't know. I'd have to think about that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go ahead and guess probably not as successful as Nick Saban, whoever they would have gone with.
No, probably not.
But shout out to Bill Clark. His longtime assistant's going to take over, longtime Alabama guy too, for the year as the interim. But we'll see if they go outside. They have a new stadium where the USFL has been playing all spring, so they have that in Birmingham. But I mean, hey, he brought that program back, and Bill Clark is just someone I look at as like he's a what if. Like I would have liked to have seen him at least get one shot as a SEC Power Five coach and seen what he could have done. But all the best to Clark, and hope he gets better and has a healthy retirement.
For sure. And that's a big time legacy. Like I feel like he's the guy who saved UAB football. It's
Well, not
like
even
that was
saved, like brought it back, like it was dead. Like UAB football went away, like the whole sport went away.
and then he made them good too. It's
Mm-hmm.
like he didn't just make the team exist again. It's like they actually were good, and like they're right where they've kind of always been, where they're like one of those more respectable group of five programs.
Mm-hmm. And it's
Which
one of
is
those
why it
two.
was so weird that they shut their program down initially.
Yeah. Um, I do think it's funny, like when you saw, I think it's the Texas 5-star backer who is down to two, and the two are like Texas and Texas A&M, and he's like staying home. I forgot what his name is, but
Oh,
you know
I
what I'm
saw
talking
that.
about?
I saw that picture. Yeah, I can't remember who that
The
was
cowboy
either.
hat for both, and it's
Yeah,
just.
yeah.
But I look at that, and it just one of the things because I saw a lot of people because Ole Miss obviously wins the College World Series, so Ole Miss and Mississippi State went back-to-back College World Series. And Omaha, and obviously the SEC's cleaned up in a lot of ways over the last couple of years. And something I just laughed about it. I'm like, well, yeah, geography is pretty good. Like they care about baseball in Mississippi. Like that's a national talking point or a state talking point where it's like the best players are in that area.
Well, yeah,
And
you can play baseball year round in the South
yes,
too. Like that's a big reason why not as many programs in the Northeast are as good.
right. I mean, UConn is an unbelievable story this year with the run they went on. Where you're like, oh, dude, I don't know how they did that. But you look at Ole Miss and Mississippi State. It's like, yeah, have you seen the dude? It's like a, it's like a Major League Baseball stadium a little bit. I don't know. I just think that kind of stuff's funny because when you see the Texas kid who the 5-star who's like, I'm picking between these two programs at home. That's an unbelievable advantage that a lot of schools around the country don't have, where they're just like the 5-star just wants to stay close to home. And there's all kinds of talent in the state where there is no excuse for a lot of those places where it's just geography, where you should have these guys. Like these kids want an excuse to stay home. It's a little bit different. So I don't know. We'll see on that front. But that was just to say that like Bill Clark and everything else, like restarting UAB in a really, really great area in Birmingham. And just it's a great job by him, but it's also like it's different than restarting a football program in Wisconsin or Nebraska or something like a Group of 5 school there. It's gonna be a little bit harder to get those kind of players and jump that thing back into full gear.
And that's Anthony Hill Jr.
Yes,
is the 5-star linebacker
there you go.
from I believe DeSoto. Is that right? I don't know. Don't put me on the record on that.
Well, this is a live podcast, so I'm not going back through and editing that. PJ Fleck in the news this week for something you don't want to be in the news for. Matt Green, a former player, Val Martin, tweeted about the culture at Minnesota. I hadn't realized he's already been there since 2017. That's kind of wild that he's already half a decade at Minnesota. Does it feel like that for you? Does it feel like he's been at Minnesota that long?
You said how many years this is?
This will be year 5.
Okay, yeah, I guess that does make sense. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it does feel like just a couple years ago he was Western Michigan, the next up and coming guy. So yeah, this year 5, it definitely has flown by.
Well, Val Martin, who was at NC State for 3 years and then transferred to Minnesota before the 2021 season, took to his Twitter account who said, quote, I'm not going to lie. The worst thing I probably ever did was go to the University of Minnesota. Fleck is a hell of a car salesman. It's crazy because when I go places, people ask me, well, how was Fleck? And I just say, he is different with the eyes emoji. And they laugh and say, we heard so many stories about him. And then he continued with this whole thing like he really, really opened up. But you read it and you're like, I don't know, man. I don't know if this is going to have the kind of impact or result. Like when you read through what he actually said and it's obviously a lot of conjecture. It's just like, I don't know. He's kind of dancing around some stuff where it's like you talk to anybody and that's the culture. You talk to anybody, a lot of straw man stuff. I don't know. Like, I don't really know what to make of it. I think it's a bold move to just go this public about a Power 5 coach that it didn't work out on. But I don't know. I don't think he and PJ Fleck are going to be cool for a while based on this.
Yeah, I kind of came away thinking like when I saw this too, like thinking, oh wow, like what's the bombshell here? PJ Fleck, he's like not the guy he says he is or whatever, and I feel like he didn't really get that. It just kind of felt like a disgruntled former player, guy didn't get
Mm,
enough playing time. Like I don't know, there was nothing really specific. Like I guess he didn't really talk to him. It was like it was that a shot at PJ Fleck? Like he never said a word to me. It would just be my D line coach talking to me. Like I don't know. Like I guess is he saying he's like a phony? Like all the energy and positivity, PJ Fleck stuff. Like I don't really know what he's implying here. You know what I mean? He just
mm.
sounds like wasn't a good experience for him. It didn't necessarily sound like anything like damning necessarily about PJ Fleck's character or anything like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I think this had an intent of being like a smoking gun type thing, and I just don't think it really had that. I just think he did not have a good experience. And there were some people on Twitter who was tweeting about like, weren't you kicked off the team for violation of team protocol or something? And he, I don't think. We don't really know what the actual reason was, but of course Twitter found that out, and Minnesota fans found that out. Yeah, because one guy, Golden Gopher, tweeted at him, "Didn't you get kicked off the team for violating team policy?" And then he said, Val said, "Pack my locker up and got the hell on." So I don't know. And we don't really know what went on there, but it's just, I don't think this is a good look. I don't.
No. If you're gonna do this, it's like I feel like you gotta bring some specifics, or else you
Mm,
just kind of sound like you're being salty. Like at the end of the day, it's like if you have some specifics, like
yeah,
oh he so and so he said he would do this to my mom, and he never once talked to my mom, or
right.
something specific about I don't know how he just blatantly disrespects players or whatever. But it sounded like a guy you just never know with sports. Like especially like hanging around high school sports and stuff for years and years. You just hear so many of these disgruntled. Oh, he didn't get enough playing time, and
Mm,
like I remember hearing parents after North Gwinnett played South Gwinnett. This is
mm,
probably 2004. Lewis Williams
mm,
is on the team, and obviously like the best player in the country. Like dude's just a baller. And I remember these parents after the game going, if we have to stick around for another year of this, my son's not playing here. Like your son's not better than Lewis Williams. Like I'm
mm.
sorry, like he doesn't deserve to be playing. So it's just people have such a warped vision of how much playing time they deserve or they've earned. It's like it's hard to put too much validity into just someone who's kind of salty about how much they played.
That Comet basketball during the early 2000s with Mike Mercer, Lou
Yeah,
Will.
man, the Comet Crazies. They were
Mm-hmm.
uh, they were wild for sure. That was a good team. North Gwinnett took them to the brink in the Elite Eight, but they lost.
Is Berkmar still kind of the best team in Gwinnett? Are they still running things every year? Is that still
No,
their
I
bread and
don't. I
butter?
feel like Berkmar. I feel like that was back in the day. I
The
feel like
Weatherspoon and
I feel like
company,
like
they fell off.
actually, I think you might be right. I think a couple years ago they may have won state, but I think that was
Hmm.
like kind of bringing them back because they had a dude that went to Indiana. I remember like a couple D1 guys in their team a few years back, but
Mm.
no, that was like 99, 2000, 2001. The Tony Akins, like Wayne Arnold years. Like,
Are you a
yeah,
closet just like GSA or
dude, Berkmar
JHSA
was just they were
basketball
just
guy?
dominant, man.
Mm.
That's my
Kevin
golden
Sandy
era
is like
of
your dude.
remember. Like that's Parkview running football and
Yeah.
like Berkmar running basketball at that point. They won like three
Milburn,
state
Georgia ran
championships.
this state.
Yeah, for real. And I one of those years, remember Parkview played Brookwood in the state
Mm-hmm.
championship. Like I don't
Yes.
know if that was 04 or
2001.
05. Oh
Well, we played
01.
them
Okay.
twice, I think, actually, because we lost the second time. I think that was 04 or 05. And then the first time, because we went 99, 2000, 2001, and we played them twice in 2001. Once in the regular season, beat them, and then again in the championship game in 2001. And then 99, I think, was Harrison. And then 2000 was Northside Warner Robins. I want to say with Chancey Stuckey, if I remember correctly.
Okay. Yeah, I remember last thing I'll say,
97
2000
was Tiff County for folks counting at
2000
home.
2003 North Gwinnett at Berkmar when Major Wingate, rest in
Oh,
peace,
man.
was on North Gwinnett's team. At Berkmar's, hit like a little mini hook,
Mm,
like 5-10 feet, like with like 2 seconds left. Like that place, standing room only is like the crowd is like the most insane high school environment I've ever been in. Honestly, the place
hmm,
like because these new gyms, like Berkmar's old gym, was awesome. And that place was like scary.
mm,
Honestly, like the crowd was just right on top of you. Most of these new gyms, there's that space to walk. Like they
mm.
usually don't get completely filled. At least in my experience. But this is just completely packed. Everyone around the railings up top. Like it was insane. North
Very
Gwinnett
good.
went into the hostile environment, got the win.
Do you have a North Gwinnett helmet? We need to get you one of those to put behind the.
I know. I have a Collins Hill helmet. I don't have a
Why?
North Gwinnett because that's my GFL days.
What do you
Collins
mean your
Hill.
GFL
I
days?
was a Collins Hill Eagle back in the day.
Oh, but like, hold on. I'm talking about high school. You didn't go to Console at all, did you?
No,
Okay. We gotta
I
get you
went.
the
Yeah,
NG.
yeah. Young age.
Yeah,
Youth age.
Well, I always forget they're like close to each other. I never had a good read on where Collins Hill was. I never had a full understanding of like when they said Lawrenceville. I'm like, that's not Lawrenceville. Are they really in Lawrenceville? But it was just like
I think it's a Swanee address. It's like
yeah,
right there, Lawrenceville, Swanee,
I don't
basically.
know. Well, now you're a Tequila Falcon and you got
Yes,
the
sir.
scuttlebutt on all that. So have the season tickets been renewed yet, or do you still have some time?
Of course, man. Always won't miss a game.
There you
Never
go.
miss a game.
In all seriousness, Tori's been waiting.
Yeah, we'll check out a game at some point for sure.
At some point, he keeps kicking the can down the road. Tori, you see,
Friday,
I
Friday
tried.
night it's a long week. You know, you get to Friday night, and you just want to chill.
No, I'm at Friday Night Lights. I'm booking my schedule. I'm figuring out which games I'm going to this fall. I'm ready. It's work season. It's all gas, no brakes, Matt Green. Speaking of all gas, no brakes, the UGA football recruitment of a quarterback in the 2023 class because there were no breaks, and they put all their eggs in the Arch Manning basket. Georgia does not land Arch Manning. He winds up at Texas to continue on this preposterous quarterback room that's developing in Austin. Matt, now that you've had a couple days to sit on it, now that you can kind of feel it out, how are you feeling about Arch not picking the Georgia Bulldogs? Do you think he made ultimately the right call? Where are you at with Arch?
Did he make the right call? Absolutely not. But
Mm,
yeah, like we said before, literally right when we get off the podcast, I don't even know if you posted it the morning after. It's like
yeah,
Arch had already committed to
I think it had already
Texas.
been scheduled, but yeah, and I texted you. I was like, of course he
Yeah,
does this right
every
after.
time.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that huge get for Texas. It's interesting to see him go to somewhere that's already got a Quinn Ewers, a big time player like that. But you
Mm-hmm.
know, Ewers will be what 2 years ahead
Mm-hmm.
of Arch, so I guess that's enough separation where he should have enough time to play at Texas. I think at the end of the day, it's Austin versus Athens, like two awesome places to go to college. Like Sarkeesian has got a proven track record with quarterbacks. Like I don't feel like it's nearly as stable of a situation because that was one thing I heard with Phil Fulmer did an interview with somebody, and obviously he's very close to the Manning family, and
Mm-hmm.
he said that stability he thought was one of the big things that the Manning family like valued and everything, and I thought that meant Georgia. Honestly, like there's not a more stable program in the country than Georgia. Like not even Alabama, just because there's kind of this this little cloud hanging over, like, well, Saban's got to be retiring soon, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
next year after, it's like, who knows? He could coach for another decade. The guy doesn't even look old yet, right? So I don't know that he's going to retire anytime soon, but Kirby Smart seems like a college guy. He doesn't
Mm-hmm.
seem like he has pro aspirations. He's at home
Mm-hmm.
where he went to school. So if he wants to be the coach for the next 30 years, he's going to be the coach for the next 30 years. Whereas Texas has just been a revolving door since Mac Brown left. How many coaches are is this the fourth one? It was Charlie Strong to Herman to
Mm-hmm.
Sarkeesian. Am I leaving somebody out? Someone in between Strong and Herman,
I don't think so.
and now Sarkeesian. So the third coach
Yeah, I think it's a yeah.
since third coach in the last decade or so.
Yeah.
So Texas is definitely, they always have all the raw materials, right? They
Yeah.
always have everything that you could possibly want from the college town, from the financial support, just everything. And then now they have a
Mm.
coach that's got a lot of experience with offense and coaching quarterbacks. So at the end of the day, it's disappointing for Georgia to not get him. But I think with Georgia had the luxury of, for one, we saw Stetson Bennett. They just won a national championship. I don't think Georgia's as dependent on needing an elite quarterback to be an
Mm.
elite team. But you also, you got Carson Beck as the backup, who's been in the system for 3 years now. Brock Vandegrift, a former 5-star, going to be his second year on campus. And then Gunnar Stockton, another really highly touted quarterback who's going to be a true freshman. So Georgia's got a loaded quarterback room, and obviously Stetson Bennett coming back. So they got a loaded quarterback room. It would have just kind of been a cherry on top to just get this number 1 5-star quarterback coming out of high school. There's a chance it could have just blown up the entire quarterback room if he's good enough to start year one. But it's like, that's a good problem to have if he's better than all the other quarterbacks, right? You'll figure out who the backup is if he's the best one. So Ultimately for Georgia, it's a bummer, but I mean, I think they're still in a good position with the quarterbacks moving forward.
We should have known it was going to be Texas when Cutcliffe was involved, where he was like an advisor for Sarkisian in like February before he got pulled into the SEC office. Where it was like once he got intertwined, like that was the kid, like that was the smoking gun right there. Is like get Cutcliffe involved, Peyton's guy, Eli's guy, like that's the Manning guy. Like you bring in the relationships because like you read all the reporting about like why Texas got him because there's no track record yet to success with Sark in Austin. It's just the relationships. Like they did the relationship thing right with Arch. And I don't know, like you the thing about I think where we're at in recruiting now is you can just never have enough. You need to get one every year. You need to have one every cycle because like Tennessee fans are like, oh well, what about Taven Jackson, the 4-star from last year, who arrived early? It's like, how does this affect him with Nico? It's like, well, the main thing now, if you want to be in the big game, is you have to have a new guy every year, and like just to push because chances are someone's going to leave anyway. So the cream rises to the top, right? So whoever is number one, they'll figure it out. The best coaches like that. Don't worry about that. You do not need to worry about having too many quarterbacks in your quarterback room anymore because a lot of them are going to be gone, and the ones who will stay are the guy who works out. Like he'll stay. So I am curious when it comes to this class. Like, there's not really, they don't, when you go through the top quarterbacks, looking at this too, Georgia really hasn't put any eggs in any other premier quarterback prospect from this class, right? Like, it doesn't seem like Georgia's going to add a 4-star even from the 2023 class, right? Do you see anyone who is it? Is it the Brookwood quarterback? Is he going to, are they going to turn their attention to Dylan Lonigan, I think is his name? Who's been longtime leaner to South Carolina. Like, I don't know. Like, what do they do?
I mean, I think there's a chance they don't take a quarterback in this class. I mean, you might just take a guy, like you're saying, just, to build depth, a guy who's not afraid, to compete. But I think they're already kind of in the conversation with Julian Sayin, 2024 quarterback out of California. He's a 5-star, number 2 quarterback in the country behind Dylan Raiola, who's already committed to Ohio State. So I don't know. I don't think it'd be the worst thing in the world. Like if you think next year, if Stetson Bennett's gone, like, and Carson Beck wins the job, like Carson Beck, I mean, he'll be a junior. I think at that point, I lose track of all the red shirts in the 2020 the COVID years and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But I think he'll be a junior, and Vandergriff would be a red shirt sophomore in 2023. So it's like, and then Stockton's in his second year on campus. Like you got 3 guys that were 4 or 5-star quarterbacks. So I don't know if it's like, obviously they might not all come back, but I feel like the situation could just be so up in arms that like, yeah, you might not be starter week 1, but like so far in Kirby Smart's years, 2 of the 6 years Kirby Smart's been there, the guy who started game 1 was the starter for the entire season. So more times than not, it's not the guy who starts game 1. At least it has been so far for Kirby Smart. So injuries happen, different things happen, like bad play happens, guys don't play as well as you expect. So different things happen. And, if Georgia's where you want to be, like it's a wide open competition coming into 2023. So I don't know that you necessarily need to bring a 4th guy into there, because I think all 3 of those guys are going to come in and think, they can play, but still have enough time to maybe not transfer if they don't play right away in 2023.
So you're saying Stetson's not finishing the season as the starter. That's what you're saying, Matt Green.
No, not at all. I think if Stetson, no, it's possible with the what I just said, but if Stetson's not the starter, like if Vandegrift or if Carson Beck were to like take over in 2022, I think that's what would throw a wrench into everything. Because then if Carson Beck is like the established starter going into 2023, then maybe one of the younger guys feels a little differently. But if 2023 comes and it's like a 3-way legitimate competition, I don't think you leave just because you're not starter from day 1, because something can happen game 1, game 2, when the bright lights get on, and different guys can just play differently, so practice is a whole nother ball game. So yeah, I think Arch Manning, not that it's not like it's a, spin it that like, oh, it's a good thing that Georgia didn't get Arch Manning. They obviously wanted him, but I still think they're in a good situation moving forward.
I don't know. The way I look at it is just that like Carson's the one, he'll probably stick around until he's a grad transfer and then start somewhere else and hope he pops at like a Cincinnati or something, South Florida, wherever, and gets his starter. But he's good writing it out with Georgia for until he is a grad transfer and just keep learning under Monken and just get one shot, because it's really all you need. Like if you're a good player at Group of 5 guy and you are draft eligible the following year, you just really need to time it right. Like you don't need years of tape to go first overall. Like Trey Lance did not have to show much at North Dakota State to go in the early part of the draft. Mac Jones only had to start 1 year, obviously, at Alabama. Like you don't need a full track record to get drafted and to really rise at the ranks. You can even be seen too much. Like Sam Howell goes from number 1 overall to another season where they have a down year to 5th round, I think.
Mitch Trubisky had one full year as a starter, and he wasn't
exactly
even at Alabama or anything,
So I think a lot of quarterbacks can now look at it and go, all right, we can sit. Like there's no rush. Like if we're in a good system and we might get a shot to play, like just sit and wait. And then we just need 1 year and make sure that you pick the right spot for that 1 year to pop, wherever that is. I don't know. I just feel like Gunner and Brock will not be there long term. I think it will be like whoever replaces Stetson after this year. I think that spring battle next year will define who sticks around between those two. So if Brock wins the battle or Gunner wins the battle, that's the loser of that one. I would be surprised. Like it's the who wants to be the quarterback for South Carolina in 2023 bowl is basically what that one is.
Right. When the older guy wins the competition, though, it doesn't necessarily, put the writing on the wall. Because I mean, say Vandergriff is the guy as a junior, and Stockton is a redshirt sophomore or whatever. Vandergriff could have a great season and go pro, and Stockton could have a couple years left to be the starter. So I don't know. You never know what's going to happen. The quarterbacks transfer so much these days. Just the sheer numbers, like just the probability of it. It's like all of these guys are probably not going to end up at Georgia. Like JT Daniels transferred to Georgia and didn't end up at Georgia. So you never know really what's going to happen with the quarterback position. But you got to get the talent, get as much talent as you can, and let it work itself out on campus.
We all can't have dual sport quarterback stars like we do at the University of Tennessee with Nico Maliava competing in his volleyball championships this summer, missing out on some elite camps to win the whole dang thing with his guys. Multi-sport guy. He loves volleyball. I like it.
He's got to play volleyball. He doesn't want to compete. No, I don't like it. He doesn't have that winning. He doesn't have that it factor. He doesn't have that desire. I don't like it.
I'm gonna go with.
He's gonna be a bust. I'm calling it right now. I don't like him playing volleyball. What is he? Tom Cruise? Val Kilmer? What's going on here?
Yeah, that's a topical reference. There you go.
Is obviously Val Kilmer's not in the new one. Is there?
Yes, I thought he was.
Oh, is he? I don't know. Is he not? He's not in Tom Cruise type shape though, is he?
No, I don't think so. But I know he's in it in some regard. I'm pretty certain.
Enough.
You can't do Iceman. You can't just not have Iceman in the.
Fair enough. I actually watched the original Top Gun like 2 weeks ago for the first time. So
does it hold up?
I don't know. It was cringe for me.
Was
multiple C. I don't know. It was. I'm glad I've seen it now. Sorry, I don't know if I was super loud, but I'm glad I've seen it now.
I just the thing. If you ever want me not to do something, it's to really, really encourage. Like why? Like when I see a lot of people that I don't think I have the same taste with. Like, dude, you got to go see it. Like, it's great. I'm definitely not doing any of that. Like, that's out.
People were adamant about it. It was kind of like Black Panther was so huge. It was like, oh, you got to see it. And then I went to see it, and I was like, yeah, I forgot. I just don't. I'm not that crazy about superhero movies. So it was a superhero movie. It was fine. It was like Pacquiao Mayweather. It was like, oh yeah. This is why I don't watch boxing like ever. These two huge names sold me that this was going to be exciting, but it's still boxing, and it's just not really that exciting to me.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole different can of worms there. But Matt, you have an idea for what we're going to talk about before I hit you with some June Q&A questions for you. But you have this idea on blue blood programs.
Yes,
Outline it
sir.
for
I'm
us.
a big fan of this Q&A you got coming up here. But yes, first, so with the Arch Manning thing, I feel like I started to see a lot of just like, oh, obviously he's not going to go to Georgia, that garbage offense. Arch Manning would do that to himself, whatever. Texas, a blue blood program, all that. So I got to thinking, what makes a program a blue blood program, right? So I Googled blue blood, right? Definition of blue blood, noble birth, right? So you're just born into royalty. You didn't really earn that. You're born into it, right? Also, need to Google blue blood. You also get blue blood sports. So I'm like, you know what? I also want to see that. Blue blood sports definition, track record of winning. That's basically what it says. So I feel like that's a good thing to go on, track record of winning. But when is that track record established? That's what I feel like that's what determines who a blue blood program is. Because you have some of these programs that are some of the winningest programs of all time, but it's almost like to be a blue blood in college football, you had to do it in the early days of college football. Like it's not a club you can join after the fact.
Yeah, it's the
So
same with college basketball. It's like Kentucky and North Carolina, Duke, they're all in there. You're not dumping them off if they start to struggle and just uplift somebody else. It's not going to happen.
But it's like in someone like Villanova, it's like, oh yeah, you've been great. Yeah, you're one of the best programs in college football or college basketball. No, you're not a blue blood. You're not close. You're just not on that level. They're the Clemson. It's like Clemson has been one of the best programs in college football for the last decade. But when you have a blue blood conversation, like, no, sit down. You're not a blue blood. So it's like it's such this confusing conversation. So I went back to 1972, right? 50 years ago. So this is what I've come up with. If you don't have more than 2 national championships before 1972, you can't be a blue blood. That's what it comes down to. So you look at Alabama, 5 titles by 1972. Notre Dame had 10, Michigan with 8, Ohio State 6, Oklahoma and Texas had 3, USC with 4. So those are the blue blood programs in my mind. Alabama, Notre Dame, Michigan, Ohio State, Oklahoma, Texas, and USC. But if you look at these teams for the last 50 years, that's a long time. Michigan has 1 national championship in the last 50 years, and they didn't even win it outright. It was a split national championship. Texas has 1 national championship in the last 50 years. Like, Texas is football, right? Like 1 national champion is Vince Young putting the entire team on his back. Like one of the most ridiculous individual performances of all time. Not that takes anything away from it. They got him. But like Ohio State with 2 national championships in the last 50 years. I think that's shocking to most people with how just much of a powerhouse Ohio State feels like. You know what I mean? So it's interesting, like in how you can just be a certain way for 50 years, but we're not going to change our mind on who the blue bloods are. Miami has 5 national titles in the last 50 years, like 5 in the last probably like 40 years. Like that's way more relevant than Michigan winning 8 of their 9 national championships before 1950. You know what I mean? Like LSU has 5 national championships all time, 3 in the BCS to present era. And like LSU is just there. Like if you're determining what a blue blood is, like right now, if you were just waking up to college football, like LSU is just boom. Like that's a blue blood. Like elite players go there. They just recruit another level of talent. They just get LSU every year is just a champion. It doesn't matter who their coach is. They're championship contender all the time. So I feel like it's interesting where we make this distinction where the blue bloods are.
Well, I think from your list, like I think it's all good except I think I put in LSU over Notre Dame. I think you flip them.
But no one's calling LSU a blue blood
But they
program,
should be. Like that's one I mean, I would call them a blue blood though. Like when
they're 16th. That's the most. The other interesting thing about
yeah.
these blue bloods is they're basically 1 through 6 all time in championships, other or in all time wins, other than
Yeah.
USC at 12. But LSU's at 16. It's like
Mm.
they don't have the tradition that a lot of these other schools have, like 2 national championships before 1972, and then all 3 of them in the last 20 years or so, 18 years or so.
Mhm.
So they don't have that, and that's the same with Florida. Like Florida, the last since Spurrier basically got there, like they're one of the elite programs in college football. That's way more relevant than Notre Dame having all of their national championships before 1988 and before. You know what I mean? So it's interesting how we just kind of have this. Oh, when they're good, the college football is better, right? The sport is better. It's like, yeah, it's cool when Michigan's good, but it's in like, and that it's not all about national championships, right? Like Bo Schembechler is a historic coach, all-time great coach, but never won one national championship. So it's not like that's just an entire era of Michigan football that was irrelevant. But national championships are the most important thing, and for those programs to be elevated at such a level and not really be any better than Florida or Florida State or Penn State over the last 50 years, that's a really long time for them to still seem like a bigger brand.
Yeah, and I don't think, and I was thinking about this too because we talked about when Michigan went, like what my whole thing about Michigan. It's like it's cool. You made the playoff. Like that's good. Made the first playoff appearance since it's been around. They have not seriously competed for a national championship in what are we looking at here? 25 years, 25 to 30 around then, realistically. And then what we talked about is that like there's no path for Michigan to beat Georgia and Alabama in succession. Like there was no path for them to probably do that. Like if that happened, like that's just one of those things where I look at it and I was like, I just don't see it happening. And you think about it where them Notre Dame and you look at their total titles and like what we call them blue bloods, that era, like Nebraska just missed out on the cut where we look at it and we think 30 years out from now, do we see any titles still? No, I don't see a title for Nebraska. I don't see a title for
Nebraska's the
Michigan
really interesting one too, because it's like they weren't early enough to the
to the party. Yeah.
table to be a
Mhm.
blue blood, but it's like the 70s through the 90s, they're just about as elite as it gets. And then they've been just kind of, like we said before, a way better program than we thought under Bo Pelini.
Mhm.
But the last decade it's just been bad football. And with the current landscape of NIL and TV markets, national TV and everything, like it's hard to see Nebraska being that good again.
I just don't see when we think about it. Like, do you see a national title in just what are the odds Notre Dame, Michigan, and Nebraska win a national title in the next 30 years? I don't see it. I don't see the path with
I
recruiting. I
see
don't see
Notre
the.
Dame though. They've been to a national championship in the last
Mhm.
decade. Been to 2 playoffs the last 3 or 4 years. I think Notre Dame is very close. Like I don't. Nebraska doesn't seem like they're in the
I think Notre
stratosphere
Dame's the closest of the three.
without a doubt. Like I think Michigan, it's like some of these teams they have to find their Deshaun Watson, right? They have to find
Mhm.
their Vince Young. Like they have to just find that quarterback that just elevates the program. Like because they can't recruit like an LSU, like a Georgia, like an Ohio State. Like Ohio State, obviously they have their Justin Fields, but every other year their quarterbacks basically put up the same numbers, so they're good. But it's like I mean Georgia, they had their Herschel Walker, right? Like he basically elevated the program for 3 years in the 80s. But I think if someone told you that Georgia had as many national championships as Ohio State in the last 50 years, I think you'd be shocked by that. Like if
Mhm.
Georgia had more national titles than Texas or Michigan over the last 50 years, like that's shocking. Like for
Mhm.
Michigan and Texas to only have one title in the last 50 years, the way we talk about them was just kind of mind blowing to me.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's going to change, but I like it. This was interesting. And then looking at the titles, it's just when is Michigan getting into the double digit? But Notre Dame cleaned up back in the day. I don't know. It's just interesting to think about. It's like, well, things can change because eventually, like, you can flip back the other way, and Alabama's not going to be like this forever. And Ohio State might have a bad hire, or they might go on probation. Who knows? Like, something might change. But I don't know. I think.
And I looked up Michigan's 1948 national championship, and Notre
Uh,
Dame was ranked number 1 in the AP poll. So I don't even know. Like that's so their last two are maybe not even unanimous. So not that 1948 polls were very reliable. I don't even know what was going on at that point. But yeah. Also, USC was trying to claim 9 national titles, but I made sure that they only got 8 because AP titles just don't count in the BCS era. I'll die on that hill that LSU is the 2003 national champions, not USC. They were not going for a three-peat when they played Vince Young because they had only won 1 national title.
Wow.
I'll die on that hill. I swear.
I like it. I had to like lie. I remember where I had that game on. It was like right after I got in the first TV in my room, and I remember staying up in 9th grade for the Texas USC game and staying up. But I remember I like had to be so quiet and not react to everything to not alert my parents that I was staying up and watching the entirety of that game. And then I remember not being able to talk about it the next morning and be like, "Oh, what happened? What?" Like I remember.
That's awesome. Oh, was there a game? Who won the match?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, it was something about too, like the Rose Bowl. Like I feel like did Keith Jackson like come out of retirement or something for the game? I feel like it being a big deal. Like he did.
I mean,
this
he called
game,
it. Yeah.
but he didn't do it. He was kind of past his like doing games every week kind of era, I think. So there's something about it, like in the moment, you knew that like this was like legit one of the greatest games of all time. Like this was incredible.
I got to remember my biggest Keith Jackson memory is the Oklahoma or Nebraska Colorado game where Colorado with Chris Brown and company upended Nebraska and just beat the living crap out of him. Do you remember that game? Nebraska might have been number 1 in the country at that point.
You're talking when they still got the national title with Eric Crouch, when they got blasted by Colorado like last game of the season. I'm thinking of Bobby Purify, I think was the running back.
For who? Colorado?
For Colorado.
Well, maybe it was Purify and Chris Brown. Because remember Chris Brown, number 22.
Over the Titans.
Oh.
That's who you're talking about, Chris Brown?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
He was huge.
Was he on that team?
He was.
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, he was definitely better than Bobby Purify. I just remember that name, Bobby Purify.
It's a good name.
He had I think you had like 150 yards on Nebraska that game. But yeah, they scored like 60.
Isn't it amazing to think about? And can you imagine Colorado Buffaloes scoring 60 at any point in the not too distant future?
Over how many games?
Yeah.
Over like the first half of the season.
Life comes at you fast, man. Life comes at you fast. Main event here, Matt Green. We got we're gonna do a June Q&A type thing, where I want to pick your brain about some questions that I came up with. I think we should do this at the end of each month during the off season. So I'll circle back with some more stuff in late July. So I came up with 5 questions that I wanted to get your perspective on that I think might elicit some fun conversation. First, who is the next team?
Can I press time out real quick before we move on for this Colorado-Nebraska game? You're definitely right. Bobby Purify had 20 for 154 and a touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
Chris Brown had 24 for 198 and 6 touchdowns. Yeah, 62-36. Colorado beat Nebraska. Had 380 yards rushing.
What year was that?
2001. And so that was when like Oregon was going to like claim a national championship, I think that year, because they were like number 2 in the AP poll, I think, and Miami was 1. So it was like Nebraska was like 3 or 4 in the AP poll, but they were 2 in the BCS. So I think if Nebraska like won the Rose Bowl, then I remember Oregon making a point that like they were going to claim a national title or something because they were going to be number 1 with Joey Harrington, in their heyday. But it did not happen because that was like the greatest Miami. It was like the greatest football team of all time, and they absolutely beat the brakes off of off of Nebraska. Willis McGahee, Andre Johnson, Kellen Winslow, Clinton Portis, like Jeremy Shockey, just Ed Reed, like
Ken Dorsey,
John Vilma, like just an absurd talent on that team.
Lito Shepherd, maybe was he on that team?
No, Lito Shepherd's Florida.
Oh, Lito Shepherd was Florida. Wait, who am I
They
thinking
had
of? Sean Springs,
Antrell Roll, I think, was on that team.
Antrell Roll, yeah.
Sean Taylor, that may have been a year before Sean Taylor.
Yeah.
But yeah, just a loaded squad.
There you go. 6 touchdowns. That's bonkers.
Yes, Chris Brown went off. But yeah, so back to your Q&A.
What a waste of memory that I have. I just have this distinct, like, what do you remember about 2001? Chris Brown ran all over Nebraska. What a waste.
Honestly, what you said 2001, I feel like I remember so many things from 2001. That was when only sports. That was the only thing that mattered in my life. Now I got other things going on in my brain, but in 2001, you could just consume only sports knowledge. Iverson's MVP, Hobnail boot. There's some big time events in 01.
Hobnail boot? I don't recall.
Luis Gonzalez with the walk-off World Series hit 01. Big time year for sports.
Young Kim, was that the closer for?
Young Kim. Oh man,
that was a good team. That was
Tony Womack.
Yeah, I love those uniforms. They should bring those back. Those purple ones, the purple pinstripe. That was a cool look.
Same. And my last year of T-ball was like the first year the Devil Rays and Diamondbacks came out to date myself there. Okay. And I remember my friend's dad was the head coach, and we had like the first pick. So he's like, "You guys want to be the Diamondbacks or the Devil Rays?" And I guess we had the choice of what team we could be, and so we chose Diamondbacks. So I remember loving those uniforms.
I think I was both. I think I was both, and pretty good on the Diamondbacks or the Devil Rays. I remember getting hit a lot. Like being a lefty in Little League is rough sledding because no one can pitch to lefties in Little League. So
I was a lefty hitter there. I'm with you with the lefty batting. The lefty lifestyle, I don't live that with you, but lefty batting, I'm right there with you.
I love being a lefty. I like being a lefty. It's different now. The whole signing, like them not.
I condone your lifestyle. To be fair, I'm just right-handed.
I do love they just kind of like said, no, we're not evolving for you. Like everything else adjusted over the years with stuff, and left-handed people were not going to complain that hard. Where it's like, are we really going to go protest no desks for us? Like, are we going to go to Capitol Hill? We're going to march for the fact that our classrooms just decided we're right-handed only, and you're going to have to do this with your your hand. Like you're not going to get your own type of desk. Like that's just what happened. Like lefties just never did enough about it. And they were just like, what are you going to do? You want us to redesign the whole system and build all these desks for left-handed people? No, you're just going to learn how to use the right-handed desk.
For an unknown number of left-handed people, what are we supposed to do about that?
It's a real thing. I always thought that was funny that we just never evolved, and they were just like, nah, screw it.
No, you deal with it.
Who, Matt Green, is the next team to win the SEC not named Alabama or Georgia?
I started to get super hot with this take, right? So I think common knowledge or common wisdom would tell you Texas A&M, right? Everyone's telling you A&M's knocking on the door. I almost went real hot and was going to say Oklahoma as the next team to win the SEC, because I think Alabama and Georgia, I could see them winning the next 2 or 3. What we got, 2 more, 3 more, and then we got Oklahoma and Texas joining the SEC. So, but I didn't. I'm not going Oklahoma. I'm going with LSU. The last 3 coaches, as you know, that LSU has had have all won a national championship.
Yes,
and they've all done it in the first 4 years. Nick Saban did it in 4 years. Les Miles and Ed Orgeron both did it in 3 years. I guess Orgeron was kind of the 3.5 year. But so I think in the next 3 or 4 years, Brian Kelly, he's been proven to be one of the best coaches in college football. At Notre Dame, I just think the sky is the absolute limit for what LSU can be under a really good coach like Brian Kelly. Like they won a national championship, and I think we can all agree now. Like I said it at the time, I think we can all agree now, Ed Orgeron was never a good coach. Like he just kind of lucked into just this perfect situation of the stars aligning and getting this incredible transfer quarterback. And like
The
that's what
right
happened. Like
assistants,
he had to
Joe
do
Brady.
some good things for assistants for sure, but
Mhm.
I think they could tell a year after that team dismantled, like they fired him. Like it's so Ed Orgeron, I think, wasn't even a good coach, and he won a national championship. Brian Kelly is one of the elite coaches in college football, and I think once he gets LSU to what the program he wants, like I think they're going to be right there with Alabama and Georgia and Texas A&M every single year. And I think I'm more convinced that they're going to be there with Alabama and Georgia than I am Texas A&M because Texas A&M, like Jimbo's recruiting great, but someone was recruiting great too. Like he wasn't recruiting on Jimbo's level by any means, but A&M has been getting talent basically since they joined the SEC. Johnny Manziel, they just perfect timing for them. They've hit the ground running. Like they've been getting good recruiting classes, and we've still seen a lot of 8 and 5s. Like I know that the COVID year they're kind of punished for. Like people don't really remember how good they were that year, but I'm more convinced that LSU will be there quicker than Texas A&M.
Interesting. I would still say A&M. Like I'm almost just to the point where I'm like, it's just too much talent where you
Yeah.
have so many 5 and 4 stars on this roster that like I genuinely don't know how you don't break through with that kind of blue chip ratio where we haven't seen recruiting like this over a 2 to 3 year span ever. So
I mean, the only reason you might not is because how elite they've been over the last 2 or 3 years or whatever that looks like in 2023, 2024, like whatever classes they have stacked on top of each other, Alabama and Georgia, it's going to be basically just as good, right? Like maybe they're number 1 the next couple of years and Alabama's 2 and Georgia's 3 or 4, but like those teams are signing elite classes too. So they're just getting the prerequisite talent that's required to be able to expect national titles and SEC titles, but it's still far from actually getting it done.
I think my wild card's probably Arkansas. Like I think that's one that would be like Arkansas is a wild card one where Pittman's cleaning up and recruiting. Like Arkansas is recruiting their tail off, and KJ Jefferson's a really good player. They are recruiting well at the quarterback spot. Like Pittman's been able to keep Odom, Bryles as his coordinators. Like there's a lot of continuity there. Like they're probably the wild card scenario where if the season where everything goes right, I could see it. Like I could see them just getting like just having the perfect season where they make it through. But it's just a tall task to ask any of these non-Bama A&M teams to be like, you gotta run the gauntlet and then play Georgia or something in the SEC title game. That's just a lot for a team that will not have the blue chip ratio necessary to win a title. So I don't know. I think they're close and I think they're a wild card team, but I don't know. No one else really jumps out in the
So,
East. Yeah, go ahead.
so if you had to make a list right now, who are you saying is number 1? A&M, and then you
A&M.
would say Arkansas 2.
If I do this list, I'd probably do A&M 1, LSU 2,
Okay.
Tennessee 3, Arkansas 4, Ole Miss 5.
Ooh, Ole Miss. See, I would say
Because if you look at the
LSU
portal
1.
stuff where you bring in a Dart, Zach Evans, a bunch of former 5
See,
stars,
I
and this.
think. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, no, I was just saying like they're the other lightning in the bottle. Where if like he's the portal king, where we could have a portal SEC championship, like Lane Kiffin would be the one to do that, where he just gets all the 5-star, 4-star guys in one year, and for whatever reason they all coalesce and just create the perfect roster, kind of like the LSU year, where he could have that LSU Ed Orgeron year, where he has a Joe Burrow, like Jackson Dart could be that kind of guy, whoever it is, and then they just have this unbelievable year and run the gauntlet and go to the playoff or whatever. But I don't know. I think it's just we'll have to see. They just
If
won 10
I'm
games for the first time ever.
for sure, but no, they're definitely in a good situation right now. I think this is a very important year to kind of tell us like what kind of program Ole Miss is. Like, is their rebuilding year a 6-6, or is their reloading year a 9-4? Like I think it's a big because I think they're taking a step back, but if they're still the second or third best team in the West, like that's another level that Ole Miss hasn't been at. Like they're a kind of a stars align. So this is the year that we could win the SEC West type of team. If they can be competing for the West multiple years in a row, I think that would show huge improvement. If I'm making my list, though, I'm definitely going LSU and A&M 1 and 2. I'm tempted to go Florida ahead of Tennessee, but Billy Napier's open letter to the fan base,
Not great.
That really worries me. That gives me some Butch Jones flashbacks.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what are we doing here with our media? Are we all rowing in the same direction or what? Like just being a little rattled by some of the pressure before ever coaching a game. Not a great sign. So I almost want to go Florida or Tennessee right there. But after Florida or Tennessee, I think it's Oklahoma or Texas.
We can't throw them in. I wasn't including them. Yeah, I wasn't including the new ones.
But you're saying the next to win the SEC, we only have like 3 more years. I don't.
So you're saying it's Bama and Georgia only for like the next 3 years?
No, it could be LSU. They could be in there the 3rd or 4th. But I think I don't see Ole Miss winning an SEC championship in the next 3 years. And then once Oklahoma and Texas are in, like it's not getting easier for Ole Miss. Like they've never even won the West. So I don't know. It's hard for me to see Ole Miss getting in there. And then someone like Oklahoma, and I don't know. I don't see them doing it before either of them.
Do you think Saban's in the conference still when Oklahoma and Texas come? What if he leaves he retires the year before they come in?
Man, that would be pretty crazy. That would really open things up in a even more wide open 16-team conference.
He's
I don't know.
70. He turned 71
but look at
fall.
him. Like he looks the same as he did in 2006. Like
that's fine. When did Bobby Bowden retire? What age was Bobby Bowden?
I mean, him and Paterno got into the 80s. Like I want to say Paterno was like 85. But Paterno also should not have been coaching at that point. Like he was just so old. Like Bobby Bowden, and we don't have to get into anything else, but Bobby Bowden like at least seemed like a functioning human being in like 2004, 2005. Like Paterno, no disrespect to Paterno, so I'll leave it at that. He wasn't looking great in those last years.
I mean, Bobby Bowden from 87 to 2003, 2004 is one of the more underrated runs of any coach of all time. So anyone who's like Bobby Bowden's not one of the 5 best college football coaches of all time, I'm like, you're mistaken.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
That's why I had in Florida State in that blue blood conversation. Yeah. It's like 3 national championships in the last 30 years. Like that's way more relevant than anything Michigan and Notre Dame did before 1948. Like, sorry.
First coach fired in each Power 5 conference will be who?
Oh, man. Great segue, sir, because the answer to that question is Florida State's own Mike Norvell.
Ooh.
Because this is the main reason. If it's going to be early, it's got to be a big-time program.
Yeah.
Jeff Collins is the answer. They've already made the decision to fire him, but they're not going to fire him before the season's over because what is Georgia Tech going to do the first 6 games? Oh, we're 2-4. Oh, we got to fire Jeff Collins now. Like, no, 2-4 might be encouraging depending on where they are,
Well, that schedule, there's no path. Like, it's just, we've talked about their schedule. Like, Georgia Tech has no path. Like, Jeff Collins, it's over. There's just no path.
So it's like that decision's already been made, but I don't feel like he'll be the first one fired because it seems like only big time programs fire the coach mid-year because it's just like, this is unacceptable. You know what I mean? Clay Helton getting fired type of thing at USC, like Ed Orgeron getting fired. Like, it seems like bigger programs, like they can't wait to the end of the season. So looking at the first 7 games for Florida State, they open with Duquesne, which I didn't even know had a football team. I've heard of their basketball program, but after Duquesne, LSU at Louisville, Boston College, Wake Forest, I didn't write it. I think it's at NC State, and then Clemson. Like that's 7 games right there. They're 3-4. They could be 4-3, maybe 3-4, maybe 2-5. Like, would you be surprised if they lost to LSU, Louisville, Boston College, Wake Forest, NC State, or Clemson? They could
No.
lose all of those games.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is year 3, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of Norvell. You start 2-5 in year 3, you're done. Like
I think it'd be
that's
different if you got Hunter. Like if that class worked out and you get the
yeah.
number one player, like I think that hurts. Like they
I
did
think
not
that's
close.
massive. Yeah, because that was a tangible
We're making
sign that the
progress.
program is moving in the right direction. Exactly. Year 3, and the ACC has not been great either. So it's
Mm,
like, and it's not just the ACC holding you back either when you lose to Jacksonville State.
right.
So with that first 7 games, and then they have a bye week, it seems like a kind of a convenient time to fire a coach and kind of circle the wagons.
Mm-hmm.
Like I see Mike Norvell being the first guy that's fired this year.
That's interesting. I'm still gonna go Brian Harsin based on everything I've heard. Like I think Harson's just the one where it's like the dead man walking type thing. Like there's just I don't see him being the head coach of Auburn very long. I think he's my number one pick when I'm forecasting. When you talk about short leashes, I don't think they get any shorter for head coaches, Power 5 head coaches, than what Brian Harson's walking into in 2022.
No, that's definitely true. The only thing, the win-loss matters, right? So
I don't
Auburn
think it
opens
does
with
at Auburn. I think it's just.
no.
I think.
But it definitely matters some. Like winning cures all. Like so Mercer, San Jose State, Penn
Yeah.
State, and Missouri, first 4 games, all at
Like if they
home.
lose to Mizzou and Penn
LSU,
State back to back, like that's probably it.
but LSU is also, that's the 5th one. So all
Oof.
5 of those games are at home. But I'm just saying, if you turn it around, if you beat Penn State and LSU and you start 5-0,
Mm.
like it's not out of the question for them to start 5-0. Like Missouri is not a good football team. That doesn't mean they can't beat Auburn, but like Auburn should beat Missouri, and we like it's hard to know what we're getting with Penn State. Like Penn State is just one of those kind of unpredictable, kind of wild card teams. They're not giving you much on offense, at least not with, maybe they're different with Sean Clifford this year, but LSU, obviously year 1 of Brian Kelly, like with all of those games being at home, it's not crazy to think they could start 5-0. And like the entire just tone of the program is completely different. Then you have at Georgia, at Ole Miss, Arkansas, at Mississippi State, A&M. It gets a little harder after that, but a strong start, I feel like, could make a 7-5, 8-4 type season seem a lot better. I mean, 8-4. If he goes 8-4, they can't fire him, can they?
Yeah, they can. They're Auburn. They absolutely can. If the boosters are like, yeah, and it's an ugly 8-4 where the offense really sucks and it's not fun to watch and the fans aren't coming and the fans are upset and the people that pay a lot of money at Auburn and the recruiting's not doing any better and they're not using NIL and they're not doing like, no, I don't. Like I don't think this is going to end well.
Okay, so let's play it hypothetically here.
Yeah.
So let's say they get off to this great 5-0 start, right? At Georgia, you lose. Say at Ole Miss, you lose. Beat Arkansas at home, right? It's a solid win. Win at Mississippi State. Lose to Texas A&M at home. Beat Western Kentucky. You're 8-3 going into the Alabama game. Lose to Alabama 34-24. Touchdown game going into the 4th quarter. Like go 8-4. Like I just don't think, like with you got wins over Arkansas, LSU, and Penn State by the end of the season. Like I think that's enough positivity in a year where it's just so wide open, the SEC West, and just so much negativity coming around the program. I feel like that would be a great season. Like I don't like that if 8-4 can't keep his job, then I'm not sure there is a chance he keeps his job.
Well, just to be clear, Auburn fans weren't happy at 9-4, 8-4 Gus. So that's a more fun offense and had more of a track record of success in the SEC. He went 6-4 in that last year, but that was a COVID year, so we don't really know that sounds like an 8-4 normal year for Gus.
Yeah, that's true.
So I think he would have gotten fired at 8-4 after that kind of year. You look at Gene Chizik, which obviously goes from 8-4 to 3-9. Tuberville gets fired at 5-7, but he went 9-4 the year before. Terry Bowden started off 1-5 after 10-3 the year prior. Pat Dye was 5-1 that
Terry
last year.
Bowden. There's also some off the field stuff going
True.
on with Terry Bowden too.
But I think you're gonna have to show more. Like it's gonna have to show that you. I don't know. It just seems like the hill is too high for him to climb, and to climb out of it. And I just don't think the culture fit will matter more than anything else. That's what you got to remember too. It's like if he's not being the CEO, go Auburn, Mr. Auburn, like shaking hands, kissing babies, fixing that stuff this summer and this fall, he can go 8-4, 9-3. Who cares? Like they're still going to move on from him. Like it's just.
I think a lot of it though, it's like it depends on where the wins come because some
You're
of those
really
wins
focusing on the field stuff, Matt. And let me tell you, you have to throw that out the
winning
window.
cures all, man.
It doesn't. It doesn't, because they want to be a part of it just means more down here. You know that. It just means more. Like you've got to be the other stuff. You got to be the CEO. Like you have to be a CEO coach or you will not keep this thing humming. Like Jeremy Pruitt could have won 9 or 10 games, but he was not doing the CEO stuff. Like that was something that just was not happening. And if you're not doing that and you're not
But he also
appeasing the
wasn't
right
winning
people,
9 or 10 games either.
that's true. That's true. But I think a lot of programs, I don't think the donor base who pays the checks and pays the buyouts and all that kind of stuff will look past the winning, even if they don't like you or they can tell that you don't like them and don't prioritize them. I don't know. I think money talks and culture fit talks. And I don't think so. I mean, he might just quit. Like he might go 8-4, 9-3 and just resign. That's also a possibility.
No, it's definitely a possibility for sure. I think Carson is definitely one of the coaches on the hotter seats coming into college football this year. I started to say Scott Frost, but
can I give you my three? My three that I think
Scott Frost is gonna right the ship. Like I want him to right the ship.
But if he doesn't, he's going early. Like that's the thing is if Frost does not steer the ship in the right direction, like through 5 games, he's gone early. Like I don't think he gets a full season. So I think Frost is actually a good bet because either things go really well for Nebraska and he gets like an extension, or things are not great out of the gate and he's one of the first coaches fired. I actually think that's a good gamble.
Yeah, I could see it for sure.
Well, you have him, and then there's 2 more I'll throw out. Carl Durrell at Colorado. I think there's no path to him keeping his job after this year. And then Dino Babers. If you look at the Syracuse's early schedule, I think those guys are both probably gone. I just don't know if they'll be first. So that's probably my big 4 to start things off. Is those 4.
And you know who's not going to be gone is James Franklin, because it really does not matter how bad they start the season. They just don't have the money.
But it's also like,
what did he sign? 10 years, like 120 million or something like that.
He's worth every penny. James Franklin's a great coach. He got into Vanderbilt. I don't care. You win almost 10 games at Vanderbilt, you get a statue. You can coach wherever you want to coach forever. Like they recruit really well. He hires well.
Forever, but
James Franklin is a top 10 coach in the sport. Great recruiter. Great hire.
I agree with that.
Like hey man, like you're Penn State. Like just be happy to be there. Like Franklin should be there as long as he wants to be there.
For sure. It's 4-5 and 7-6. Although I'm still going to give him the 5-4 from the 2020 year because I'm still protesting Michael Penix Jr.'s touchdown or 2-point conversion. I can't remember what it was at this point.
Let's also go through those losses this past year with Penn State and the injury stuff that hit. Like it's a deceiving season for them last year. I think they'll be fine. I think they'll right the ship a little bit this upcoming year. And I think they got a 4 or 5 star coming in.
Ranked as high as 7 in 2020 and ranked as high as 4 in 2021.
That's what I'm saying. And just didn't
finish both seasons unranked.
But the whole point is you're Penn State. You want to be in you're in the top 10 every year.
They were also preseason 7 in 2020. So I think it just went straight downhill from there. But they started 19 last year. It got up to 4. So I know
James Franklin's the least of Penn State's concerns. Like
no, without a doubt. He's just getting paid an absurd amount of money for off some 4-5 and 7-6.
Okay, seasons. You're just you're keeping this thing going. Who is not in the Heisman conversation right now, Matt Green, but will be by the end of the year?
That would be the 2022 Kenny Pickett.
Yes.
Would be from quarterback U, which is Devin Leary out of NC State. I think Devin Leary will be in the Heisman conversation because I think NC State will could be a 9-3, 10-2 type
You got
season.
to win 10 games. Like that's the whole thing is you got to win 10.
I think so. I think that's probably true. And if they could make the conference championship because we all know what division they're in. We don't need to talk about it, but we know that they could potentially win that division. And I think Devin Leary, I think he's going to have a big time season. And NC State, we know about the track record with quarterbacks. And I think he's getting some love. And I've seen NC State. I mean, I've seen some people have him top 10 come into this season. So I'm a little bummed about that because I wanted that to be my hot take. But I guess people are jumping on the Wolfpack bandwagon. So yeah, that's my answer.
You're not going to be mine, Matt Green.
Hendon Hooker?
It is Hendon Hooker. So I had a stat for you last week where Tennessee was the only Power 5 school to be top 10 in points per game last year and to not win 10 games. You look at Heisman's now, you have to win 10 games. You have to be in the SEC title game. You got to be in the playoff picture a little bit. Hendon Hooker is not in the conversation yet. But if the offense, if he's even a little bit better than what he was last year with 31 touchdowns and 3 picks, and Tennessee is knocking on the door of 9-3, 10-2, and they are right there neck and neck with Georgia and Bama in the fourth quarter, and he goes throw for throw with Bryce Young and Stetson Bennett, he's in the conversation. Like that's just going to happen. And a lot of people buying the Will Levis and Spencer Rattler dark horse stuff. And I'm like, the track record is already there. Rich Gangarello is coming into Kentucky. We don't know what the drop off there for OCs is going to be. And we've never seen a high octane Kentucky offense to this point. Still waiting on that one. We'll see. I think Will Levis is like that kind of guy who'll be a completely different quarterback in the NFL than what he is at Kentucky, but we'll see. Spencer Rattler, like it's just, we'll see with Satterfield if he can fix that stuff because the offense was bad last year. And I mean, it's not like they're loaded in the wide receiver room in Columbia. So I don't buy that. It's just Hendon Hooker, like Heupel offenses. We've seen Drew Lock, Dylan Gabriel, his guys have been in the Heisman conversation. And I think not to be a homer, but I do think Hendon Hooker makes a lot of sense as the guy that they're like, I don't think so. And then if Tennessee beats Florida and Pitt early, I think if they're 4-0, 5-0 going in, if they're undefeated going into the Alabama game, Hooker is in the Heisman conversation.
You also need to start the Brock Bowers for Heisman conversation as well. But no, I like that Hendon Hooker pick because we know stats are such a huge part of it, and with the offense that Tennessee runs, like how good his stats were last year, like at the end of the day, wins and losses is going to be huge, and it's those moments too, like if he goes toe-to-toe with Alabama, like you're saying, he goes toe-to-toe, maybe they upset Georgia, they upset Alabama, something crazy like that happens. Like I could see, and even if they don't, if those are their only 2 losses and they're a 10-2 regular season, top 10, top 8 team or so, like you could definitely see him in that conversation as well as, as far as stats go, making some plays with his legs. Maybe he gets his Matt Corral on, has 8 to 10 rushing touchdowns or something, So I could definitely see that. I'm glad you brought up Will Levis because, like, I feel like people are making me hate on Will Levis, and I don't want to hate on Will Levis. Like, Will Levis is solid, but now that he's getting all this hype, I'm just like, where did this come from? Like, where is Will Levis? Like,
well, here's what it is that
he's draft because he's 6'4", 240 or whatever, however big he is.
Well, I think that's it. Is that the hype is coming from his draft stock, not from what he's actually doing at Kentucky. So it's like they're equating the two different things where it's like he's profiling as a better NFL quarterback and has the physical tools and just like shape and makeup of an NFL quarterback. But it's like, okay, well, Stetson doesn't, but Stetson's going to put up significantly better numbers on a better team. Like Stetson should have higher Heisman odds than Will Levis. Like he was better than Levis last year. It's okay to have be a better college quarterback with no NFL prospects.
Yeah, and I guess that's fair. So people could be confusing the NFL stock with how good he's actually going to be at Kentucky this year. But it's almost like it's like a Kentucky quarterback, he can't be legit, but a Penn State quarterback that went to Kentucky, we can give him some hype. You know what I mean? It's like it's kind of funny how just our perception of Kentucky, kind of what it is, and that's partly on me. I'm not giving Kentucky enough respect, but
they were 73rd in passing offense a year ago. The team in front of them, 72, had one of the worst offensive coordinators in football in Jim Donovan in the Washington Huskies. That offense was dreadful. They were behind them in passing offense. Like Will Levis is not going to put up the numbers in this Kentucky in the Stoops offense where it's ground and pound. We're just going to be extremely physical. It's not reality. Will Levis is not a Heisman candidate. It's just not a thing.
No, I do not see that happening at all. And mainly just because I don't see Kentucky being competitive enough to have a Heisman quarterback.
Yeah.
Andre Woodson, that he had a great season and everything. It's like that was about as competitive as Kentucky gets. And maybe once every 10 years they can.
Well, when they got there, it was the air raid with Humey. What was his name?
Hal Mummy.
Yeah, Mummy. Yeah, like that was it. Like that's how they got in there. Like that's the Tim Couch era. When you're really passing all over the place, that's how you get in the Heisman conversation as a quarterback at Kentucky. That's not what they're doing whatsoever.
Yeah, they've become a better, more consistent program under Stoops, but they are not the place for a quarterback to go and put up numbers.
Yeah, it's just not reality. Sorry, Kentucky fans, but I'm looking forward to another beatdown.
No, I thought Rattler. I thought for sure you were going to hate on the Rattler if I threw him in there. But it's hard to imagine Will, and I don't want to hate on Will Levis. He's one of those guys. It's like the media hype and people's expectations kind of forms your opinion of certain players. It's like there's plenty of players that are the exact same caliber, but one was a 5-star recruit and one was a walk-on. So their perceptions of them are very different.
I agree. Next up, the next player, Georgia fans, this is right up your alley. I'm giving you a layup here. The next player Georgia fans fall in love with will be who?
Do you have a guess for what my answer will be?
No idea.
So I started to say Jalen Carter, but I didn't know if he's too mainstream at this point, if he's too well known. He's getting kind of top 5, top 10 pick hype. So I think Jalen Carter is going to be an absolute monster. Like as good as Jordan Davis was and Devontae Wyatt was, I feel like Jalen Carter is the true every down defensive tackle that's just can rush the passer, can stop the run, just throws offensive linemen around like rag dolls. He's an absurd athlete. I think he's the best defensive lineman in the country this year. But the other two I have is either Eric Gilbert. I think Eric Gilbert, oh man, watching him in the spring game, it's hard not to get I'm trying to temper my expectations because I know this guy's dealt with some things off the field and whatnot. You just want to see him actually lace it up and be in a Georgia uniform before you hype him up too much. But we did see that in the spring game, and man, he looked damn good in that uniform too, I will say. But so Eric Gilbert, I feel like he's just going to be an absolute freak. I don't know if he's going to be a tight end, wide receiver, whatever he is, he's a weapon. I think with him and Brock Bowers, Georgia's tight ends are just going to be unguardable. That's not even including Darnell Washington. But the other one, I think, if he can just stay healthy, it kind of applies to Kendall Milton as well, who I think could be this. But if Arian Smith stays healthy, this man is like a 50-yard touchdown just waiting to happen. When Mecole Hardman left Georgia, I feel like Georgia has not replaced that just ridiculous speed, deep threat. And there's not many people in the NFL that have Mecole Hardman's speed, so that's rare. It's rare air, but Arian Smith, we've seen him play in 2 years. He's played maybe 3 or 4 or 5 games or so for Georgia. And every game he plays, he's got a 40 or 50-yard touchdown in it. He's got ridiculous track speed. And I think if he's healthy, I think he gives Georgia a dimension that they haven't had since Mecole Hardman left, just to take the top off of defenses.
I like that pick. We'll end on this. Which fan base is the most unrealistic in terms of expectations, do you think, Matt?
Well, we got to start with the Tennessee Volunteers.
I don't think that's a good one. I don't think I would start with that. I don't think they're that.
No, I don't. I feel like they're too scarred. You guys are too scarred at this point. I feel like you're ready to love again, but you're prepared to be hurt, I think Florida isn't prepared to be hurt again. They're just because Florida, all of their history is modern history. Yeah. So I feel like it's just, let's just get the right coach in here and we'll be winning national championships again. But I don't know if it's that easy. And if now they're on, what we got, Muschamp, McElwain, Mullen, 4, this is the fourth coach they've had. I mean, so three coaches have come and gone without winning a national championship, without even winning an SEC championship. At some point, like the expectations for the program kind of change. And so maybe Mullins' like lack of recruiting has kind of brought him down enough to like where they're not as delusional as they once were. But I still don't know if they grasp the reality of like kind of how good they were with Spurrier and Meyer, and that you're just not going to have Hall of Fame coaches every single time you make a hire. And it I don't know, they're getting so far removed from their SEC championship years. Like you got to wonder like when they are coming back.
That's interesting. I think I was going back and forth on this between Clemson, where it's like, okay, if we get rid of the Deshaun Watson, Trevor Lawrence back-to-back quarterback situation, the history isn't there. Like the expectations, like Dabo obviously built this great operation, this Death Star type thing, but like we saw, you could still have a great operation if the quarterback stuff is not great and you lose Jeff Scott and you lose your coordinators finally. Like it really is nice to have that continuity for years and years. Like that's part of the reason I have Arkansas as a wild card in the SEC is like if people love working for Pittman and Barry Odom and Kendall Briles are just like we're fine. We have no interest in being a head coach anytime soon. That goes a long way. Like that's just so
a
rare.
Huge part of it.
Yeah, so I think that is something to watch at Arkansas. But like, you look at it and you're just like, you expect to bounce back and like we'll be in the playoff this year. And I don't know, man. Like the majority of your life has just been okay. Like they've been an okay program. And now it's like a national title expectation. Like we should be in the playoff every year expectation at Clemson. And I just don't think that's sustainable. And I think when it changes, like the ACC just doesn't have the resources. Like that's something else you got to remember is the ACC is behind the Big Ten and the SEC significantly. And I don't know. I think Clemson over the next couple of years is probably the most interesting college football Power 5 team to me because they're at a crossroads. Like they can prove a lot of people wrong if Dabo can weather the storm of the coordinator departures and just not having the right quarterback for a little bit. Like if he can keep this thing moving, and I mean, he just got Vic Burley from South Georgia, and it looks like they're going to have a pretty good class this upcoming year. But like, this is everyone is pointing to, yeah, you had Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence back to back. That's a big reason why this thing worked and you beat Alabama a couple of times and all of that. It's just you had two of the best quarterback prospects of the last 30 years in back-to-back years. Like you deserve credit for recruiting those guys and developing those guys.
And that's what I was going to say.
But at the same time, those guys are gone and you going 3 for 3. It's kind of like the Oklahoma City Thunder thing where it's like, yeah, like you did a great job drafting James Harden and Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook all together. That was great run. But now you've seen it's really hard to do that all over again. It's hard to keep doing that in a smaller market, not have the resources to really keep drafting Hall of Famers over and over again is probably not going to happen.
I expect an NBA guy like you to know that the Thunder did not draft Kevin Durant.
Well, you know what? It's the people
that Supersonics drafted Kevin.
Okay, no, they were all just
okay. I'm just being technical with you, but no, you kind of said what I was going to say, that you do have to give them credit for having Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence, that just 5-year period of just 6 straight years of getting to the college football playoff. Like it's hard to say, just remove their like 5-6 best years of their entire program and they're not that great, I guess to that point, you could probably take away a lot of other programs, 5-6 good years, and they are still an elite program. So to your point, I don't know if Clemson fans are delusional because I think it's hard to explain. Like, I feel like they might know that they had a good run. Like that they aren't a blue blood, that, it was amazing what Dabo did for us. I feel like the way they're delusional is like, but Dabo's doing it the right way, so we're cool with it kind of thing. Like as if their program is somehow like holier than thou. Like they're not doing
we don't need the portal.
That kind of thing. I feel like, I don't know if that's delusional, but it's just kind of irritating as a fan base. It's and now the NIL stuff. Now, anytime anyone doesn't get a recruit, it's like, oh, the NIL, we didn't match the offer that so and so had. So the other one I would almost said was Texas, because I feel like I feel like Texas just seems like almost a toxic delusional fan
But
base
they
that
should
like
be. Like, that's the thing. It's like Texas should be. There's too much talent. Like, Texas should be delusional. Like, the expectation should be the playoff every year.
I guess that's fair. So someone who shouldn't be there, who it doesn't necessarily have what it takes, but they think they should be
Yes.
there. That
It's
almost
Michigan.
feels that I was just about to say, it almost feels like a Michigan or Penn State. It's like, yeah, you could have your years where you might beat Ohio State or you can compete with Ohio State, but you guys aren't winning national championships. Like
Yeah.
Miami, I want to say Miami too, but they're kind of right there with Texas, like you're
Yeah.
saying. Like, look at the talent that comes out of South Florida. Like,
Mm.
you don't need to go north of Orlando to
Kids want to stay
or
there. It's
wherever
cool.
Bradenton
Yeah.
is. I don't know if Bradenton is north of Orlando, but you
Yeah.
don't need to go north of Bradenton, Florida to get every recruit you could possibly need to win a national championship.
Yeah, they have every right to have high expectations. Like, that's why they're frustrating, is that like they have a right to have those frustrations. Like, there's a reason that Jimmy Johnson at the peak of his powers at Oklahoma State was like, I'm going to go to Miami and win some titles. And that was just, there's just a different level. And I think it's just, they can't get out of their own way, the Miamis and the Texases, but it seems like both are, this is probably the most optimistic that both fan bases have been about their program in a long time. So that's interesting. But I think Michigan's probably the best answer here, right? Like, I think now that you made the playoff once, it's like, oh, Michigan's back, and this should be where we're at every year. We've shaken off the Ohio State whatever, and it's like, no, I think Ohio State's going to beat you next year, and I think that might have been a blip. I think that was your shot.
Is Auburn a delusional fan base?
I think they're probably the most delusional SEC fan base, but I think they have a right again. Like, they do it every 5 years. Great talent, great history. It's just like,
that's true. Like, we've seen it. We know you guys can do it. So we're pissed when we're terrible. We know we have what it takes. So I guess that's fair. It's just, damn, their schedule is just so brutal every year. Like, firing Gus Malzahn for 9-4, and then you look at how they recruit and who they're playing. It's like firing Mark Richt for 10-3. Like, obviously, that turned out to be a good decision for Georgia, but like Georgia was consistently recruiting the 6th to 7th best class in the SEC, or maybe 8th to 9th best class in the country, maybe the 5th to 6th best class in the SEC, and they were consistently the 4th, 5th best, 6th best team in the SEC. And it's like, it wasn't surprising. Like, that's kind of what the level you're recruiting to. So Auburn, with what they have, like, are you really supposed to go better than 9-4 when you're playing Georgia and LSU and Alabama every year, and you're also not afraid to schedule Clemson and Penn State and Oregon at a conference? Like,
iron sharpens iron, man. That's what they're doing. They're just preparing for the big games. I mean, I think the most logical fan base is like Mizzou. I think that's like the best place to be a coach, where it's like every Mizzou fan is like, we're just happy to be here. There is no expectation at Mizzou, where we understand, like, we had that great run early on.
And I feel like Ole Miss. Like, Ole Miss is like, because they have the passion. It's like Missouri, they probably know what they are and they're cool with it. But Ole Miss is like, we're gonna have an awesome fucking time down here.
Yeah.
Can we win some football games? Yeah, sure, we can do that too. But
Lane is the perfect cultural fit for Oxford.
He really is. Yeah, it just fits. So Ole Miss, like, if they go,
just get a mascot. Like, we gotta figure out the permanent animal mascot that they're gonna go with. We've gone the Bears, the Sharks. You need to figure it out, Ole Miss.
You remember who the oh man, I shouldn't even brought this up. Who the students voted for when they had it like up for?
I remember you telling me this on a previous pod.
I lost his name, so I shouldn't even brought it up. But it's the dude from Star Wars, the orange dude who's
Jar Jar
like,
Binks?
It's a trap.
Oh,
dude, you know what I'm talking
yes,
about?
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, because he was like the head of like the rebel forces or whatever.
Oh,
so
yes.
It's like they had something going there with the rebels, but yeah, I think once he won, I think they kind of vetoed the student vote. But yeah, if Ole Miss goes 8-5 each of the next 4 years, I don't think there's any Lane Kiffin hot seat talk whatsoever.
I mean, he's already maybe the best coach in Ole Miss history. He won 10 games for the first time in school history. Like, there's a path. Like, I don't know, man. Like,
so if they go 7-5 or 8-5 next 2 years, then a couple 7-6 years, do they fire Lane Kiffin?
No. Like, it could be way worse. We've seen it be way worse with Orgeron, with like the bad Cutcliffe years. No, we've seen it way worse.
I think
Houston Nutt.
Arkansas is right there too. They're like, we have a coach that wants to be here.
Yeah.
Like,
He
yeah,
wants to
we're
bathe with
good.
Razorbacks. Like, no, this man is staying as long as he wants. Like, you know how hard it is to get somebody who wants to be here and can recruit and all that kind of stuff? No. Great cultural fit. Like Lane and Sam, I
Yeah.
think, are both great cultural fits. I think Leach probably is too in Starkville. Like he's like the ultimate Starkville guy where he's just chilling and he's like, hey, we'll go 10-2 one year and y'all
I
like it.
just, I don't trust the Leach's level of consistency. Like,
Well, there's no consistency, but it's just
that's why I don't. It's Mississippi
Mississippi State.
State, so who knows?
Well, I think they know that like he's gonna get us one. Like one of these years, he's gonna go like 10-2, 11-1, where it's like, how in the heck is Mississippi State like in the SEC West? Like just the Egg Bowl decides if Mississippi State goes to the SEC title game. Like that's gonna happen at some point. I think
Would you be willing to put money on that?
that the Egg Bowl
That
will
Mike
decide
Leach
the
has
West.
that Mike Leach has a 10-win season in his Mississippi State tenure.
It depends on the years. How many years are you giving me?
How many years is Mike Leach going to be there? You tell me.
I think if you give me 7 Mike Leach years, yes. 5 is dicey. 5.5, oof. I don't know.
We'll
9
see.
guaranteed.
I would
Lock in 9. He's getting 9.
I could give him a 9-win season. I don't see Mike Leach leading Mississippi State to a 10-win season. I
If
don't
he
see
gets
it
the right
happening.
quarterback, if he has like some kind of like if he has his own Gardner Minshew and they just pass all over everybody, maybe it's Will Rogers. I don't know.
He needs
People
his
like
Graham
him.
Harrell.
Yeah.
Gardner
There you
Minshew, none of that. I mean Graham Harrell.
Okay.
What did
Green,
Gardner Minshew win? Did he win anything?
I mean, did he win anything? I mean, they were in the like if they had beaten Washington in the Apple Cup that year, they're in the Pac-12 title game.
Okay, so they did have that one good year with
Yeah.
Washington State. Okay.
He did.
Yeah, they were like close to top 10, I think.
Yeah. And I think if
Okay.
they win that and win the Pac-12, like they're knocking on the door. I don't know if that was the year that the Huskies went to the playoff and lost to Alabama. I'm not sure if that was the same year.
You could be right.
But there you go. Matt Green, find you on Twitter at Matt_W_Green, all that good stuff. And I will talk to you next week.
Yes, sir.